All right, today we're going to dive deep into a story that is just, it's one of the most harrowing survival stories ever told.
It really is. We're talking about the 1972 Andes crash, Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571.
Yeah, 45 people on board, mostly a young amateur rugby team. The plane goes down in the middle of nowhere, and after 72 days, only 16 are left alive.
It's an almost unbelievable number. 12 died in the crash itself. Then over the next week, 17 more from, injuries, exposure, even a devastating avalanche.
And the temperatures were just brutal, dropping to minus 30 degrees Celsius.
Absolutely brutal.
But our mission here isn't just to recount the tragedy. What we really want to get into is the staggering moral choice they faced. It's a real-life lifeboat scenario.
Exactly. And we're going to use a couple of ethical lenses to try and understand how they could possibly make the decision they did.
So let's set the scene for that moment. The search for them had been called off.
It was. They heard it on their small transistor radio. They were officially on their own, presumed dead, and their tiny supply of food was, well, it was completely gone.
So they're facing certain death from starvation.
Certain. That's when the unthinkable becomes something that has to be thought about.
And Roberto Canessa, who was a medical student, he's the one who first proposes it, right?
He is. He had the theoretical basis, from his studies. He knew that the human body could convert protein into the sugars they needed to live. He knew they could survive on meat alone.
On the bodies of their dead friends.
Yes. And out of that horrible, desperate idea came a kind of pact.
A collective agreement.
A collective agreement. They all agreed that if one of them died, the others were obliged to use their body to survive.
One of the survivors, Ramon Sabella, he said the flesh was hard to put in your mouth, but we got used to it. I mean, that quote it says everything about the necessity of it.
It really does. And it's interesting, the language they use is very specific.
They prefer the term anthropophagy, right?
Yeah.
Not cannibalism.
Exactly. To them, the distinction is crucial. They were feeding from the already deceased. They didn't kill anyone for food.
Okay, so let's try to analyze that choice. Where do we start?
Well, let's start with a framework that focuses purely on the outcome. That's utilitarianism.
Right. The greatest good for the greatest number.
Essentially, yes. The right action is the one that maximizes overall happiness, or in this case, well-being.
So from that point of view, the math is grim but simple.
It's very grim, but it is clear. You have the survival of 16 people versus the death of everyone. The dead, of course, felt no pain from the act. So the action, while, horrible to even contemplate, created far more utility than the alternative.
So utilitarianism would say it was morally justified.
It would, because the consequence was saving 16 lives.
That feels so cold, though.
Yeah.
So logical. What happens when we look at it from another angle, like virtue ethics, which is more about character?
That's a great question, because virtue ethics asks something different. It asks what virtues a person is displaying, things like courage or loyalty or resilience.
And you could argue they showed all of those in spades. The courage to even make that choice.
Immense courage and resourcefulness. But I think the key here is loyalty. This wasn't about selfish individual survival. It was a collective commitment to the group.
That pact they made.
That pact. And Canessa himself said something powerful. He said that if he had died, he would consider it an honor for the others to use his body to live.
That's an incredible display of selflessness.
Yeah.
A sense of duty to the group.
It is. It shows they were acting out of virtues that we all value, just in the most extreme environment you can imagine.
So when they're finally rescued and the truth comes out, what was the world's reaction?
Initially, it was shock. The yellow press, as they called it, just exploded. There were awful rumors that they had killed people to survive.
But that wasn't the whole story, was it?
Not at all. And this is the crucial part. Many of the families of the deceased and even the Catholic Church, they came out and voiced their support very quickly.
They understood the context.
They did. They argued that given the extreme circumstances, the actions were ethical. They put necessity above the common moral law.
Still, it couldn't have been easy for everyone.
No, not at all. Some family members of the deceased remained very upset by it, and the survivors' bodies were eventually buried together in a common grave there at the crash site.
So bringing this all together, looking at it through these different ethical frames, it shows that an act that seems just horrible on the surface can actually become morally comprehensible.
Even justifiable when you understand the duress they were under.
Which brings us to the final thought for you, our listener. We talk about the ethics of survival, but we usually assume that society's rules are still in play.
Right.
But when all of that breaks down, when law and common morality just disappear like they did high up in the Andes, you
Yeah.
have to wonder, does survival itself become the one and only true virtue?